Good evening, everyone. Let me try that again. Good evening, everyone. My name is Malika Lee Whitney, and I will be moderating a talk, of course, with audience members involved. So please give another round of applause for the director, Nick Redding. I guess last things first, it was wonderful to see the origins of the electric slide. I have to say that first and foremost. That was really special. And origins is something that the African tradition really likes to claim and hold on to. So thank you for that piece of rhythm. Safe, just in case our audience members are not clear on the wonderful ensemble. I want to applaud them as though they're here. So let's applaud that ensemble of actors who shared with you. How did you come to know the group? Let's start with that.
So SAFE is a charity which we use the best of the arts community to address issues. And I founded the organization in 2001. And we primarily address issues around health, like HIV, and female circumcision. But after the violence in 2008, everyone came to us and said, well, you guys have a voice. You work in these communities. And the communities were torn apart in 2008. And they said, what are you going to do? So we devised this play based on the experiences of a lot of the actors were caught up in the violence. Nene, one of the mothers, one of her friends was killed, and she witnessed a really horrible murder. So it was something that was very, we all felt very, everything else falls apart. If the country falls apart, everything falls apart.
So your direct connection, expat, born there, how do you get to be a Brit Kenyan?
I got to be a Kenyan because I met a Kenyan pediatrician in Los Angeles when I was working there as an actor. And he wanted to go back to his hometown of Mombasa and establish a pediatric HIV unit in the public hospital. He was an assistant professor here at NYU, and he specialized in pediatric HIV, and he wanted to be able to offer something to mothers and children there. There were no drugs at that point. It was 2001. But low-dose antibiotics, food supplements, and probably most crucially, psychosocial support, somewhere where they could go amidst all the stigma and silence and talk. I spent 6 months with him building the clinic in Mombasa. And the thing that astounded me the most was the failure of public health education. The amount of smart, intelligent women who would come into the clinic and they would sit down and they would know nothing. And they might be a rural, illiterate woman, but they were highly intelligent, quite capable of understanding a complex medical issue, and no one had told them. And that failure of public health education I found so shocking. And so I started asking, well, what's our profession doing? Theater and education, it's a great way to get information in. And people were like, there's always little plays going on about AIDS. I said, well, let's do a big play. Let's find the best actors. So I found the best actors in Mombasa, and we devised the play, and we took it out, and the response was overwhelming from everybody, whether it was the chiefs or the support groups or the clinicians or public health officers. And they all just said, where have you people been? This is what we need the community to understand. And it's that thing with arts, if you can really move people and if you can make them laugh, then they'll listen to what you have to say. And you can educate people in a way which is non-threatening and non-judgmental. And, people don't want to be told what to do.
True. The device, for lack of a better word, of watching an audience watching as we're watching. So what was the genesis of that idea?
Well, we did this in our first film as well, which was Ndoto's Liberty, The Dreams of a Liberty. And it was because we wanted to capture that spirit, and all our productions start as plays. And it seemed if you took that away, I didn't realize quite how powerful it would be when we started editing it together. And because all the audiences they're real audiences. We just record 3 or 4 shows with cameras on the audience so we can get those reactions. And I think it's because you see the impact of the play. So it helps tell our story as safe in what we do. So that's why we repeated it in this film.
So while it's being presented in, say, rural areas or, different communities, is it broadcast on the wider networks there?
Well, now we have it, yeah, with the films. This film, we showed it to Citizen TV a week before the election, because we only got funding for the film 3.5 months before the election. So we had to write the screenplay, crew it, film it, edit it, and get it out. And we showed it to Citizen TV, and they cleared their schedules and showed it twice the night before the election. And we also did a mass DVD distribution all around the country. And there were, I mean, wonderful things in Eldoret, which was very badly affected by violence in 2008. All the video, like the video cafe in the film, all the video cafe owners, completely off their own back, got together and said, right, we're going to all show Nasisi at 8 o'clock on this evening, so they could get as much debate and discussion, because people didn't want it to happen again.
Right. Now, I realize it's not an isolated situation, but it was refreshing to see youth activism, awareness, and having a greater sense of what's happening, what's tearing them apart. It's, I guess, a hopeful idea to think that a presentation of this nature could help solve some of the problems that are unfortunately happening in places all over the world, a lot on the continent of Africa. The actors, I'm sure, when you're communicating with them, how are they conveying their sense of importance in the role of making change, and how do they convey that to you outside of the actual performance work?
I mean, in terms of feedback they get very, very positive feedback. There's very little voices raised to talk about Kenyan identity, and most young people feel Kenyan. They don't, I mean, there's been a lot more division since 2008, but they feel that since this film, they have a role as ambassadors to try and to promote the Kenyan identity, and it's very encouraging, the amount of people who want to grab that concept rather than be divided on tribal lines.
And in terms of scripting, how much is coming from you as a writer? How much is coming from the actors themselves? Is there a lot of, how should I say, latitude for improvisation?
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, Kenyan actors are much more innovative to work with. They're much more prepared. The Scrabble scene, I'd written a scene where they were gambling, and one of the actors, in fact, the actor who plays the drunk husband, he is Muslim from the coast, and he went, she wouldn't gamble. And I went, it's just, just 1 shilling, 1 shilling. He said, nah. So we sat there, and we're in the location, and I said, well, and we sat there, and I said, what could be? I said, do you ever play Scrabble? And they went, oh, yeah, we love Scrabble. I went, okay, let me go and find a Scrabble board. And we made that scene, and it's probably one of my favorite scenes in the film, but we made it up on the spot, all sitting there cackling with laughter while we made up these words, because the tribes in the film are made up. Which I think was 1 or 2 Kenyans maybe here, but the Watariri and Wabenda and Wazando, it's completely imaginary. But the Watariri woman has a Kikuyu name but a Luo accent, but she likes Kamba food, and so it's like a sort of kaleidoscope of Kenyan identity up there.
You're inside, but still an outsider. So where are there compromises? Because your interpretation of those situations is still somewhat removed because you're not experiencing it directly. So how do you make sure that you're not imposing on the culture, or putting in perhaps some ideas that are not valid, to the nature of the people?
Well, I did experience 2008. I was there through all the violence, so it does feel very personal. I'm from London, which is the great immigrant city.
I never would have guessed that.
But I grew up in London in the inner city, and watched all these people coming to London and taking on a British or a London identity. And I have done that I'm doing that in reverse. I'm taking on a Kenyan identity. So I do feel very Kenyan now. But we work very collaboratively. So it's, I would never say, do this, or this is how it should be. We always discuss everything. We devise everything together. I kind of give a structure to stuff, and some scenes I'll write, and they'll translate it, and then it's like, yeah, absolutely, that's exactly what we want to say, and other stuff, we then work on it. But it has to be a collaborative thing, because if it doesn't work for Kenyans, then we're not doing our job properly. Are
you set on having it exposed in Kenya? What's the prospects of having it more global, spreading out spread out through other areas in the country.
Our US premiere.
All right. Applause for that. Applause for that.
So it seems to be traveling. We premiered at Rotterdam in January as well in Europe, and it's the first time I've seen it without Kenyans there. And obviously, there's a lot of jokes that are missed, but it seems to be received extremely well. And there's a lot of people who were from other parts, conflict zones at the Rotterdam Film Festival, and they were saying, "Please give us a copy. We want to take it back and discuss it," because tribalism is not just an African issue. It's a global issue in Yugoslavia, or it's Syria, or it's wherever. And something that shows people fighting that, I think, seems to resonate with people.
I have lots of political questions, but I'm going to leave it to the audience. So please, if you have a comment or a question, this is the time. Any thoughts, feedback? Going once, going twice. Were you just swatting a fly, the handsome gentleman with the gray hair? Yeah. Oh, you were. Comments, questions? Yes, in the back.
Well, Ngugi wa Thiong'o always says that, theater is anywhere. It's by a fire. It's by storytelling there's a very strong tradition of it, and there's an ease in performance which you don't find so much in the West. People are much more prepared to get up and entertain. So yeah, I think there is. It's not a long tradition like Shakespearean. There's not written plays. There's traditional stories which have been passed down. And certainly with the Maasai who we work with, their folklore tales have gone down through generations and are performed through music and stories.
Yes, right here.
We were a little bit nervous about that because obviously the villain of the piece is a politician. But what became clear with the politicians who we know have seen it is that they don't want to say, because they don't want to say that's me. So they sort of go, oh, absolutely, yes. But we have a terribly corrupt political class, and they don't take kindly to criticism. So you do have to be a little bit careful.
Sounds like a place I know. Yes.
It was. It's very hard to be able to. I mean, the film we did about HIV is much easier to sort of measure impact with. For something like this, it's people loved it, and we've had loads of feedback from people saying, but a film is not going to stop a civil war, and we knew that at the time. But we wanted to raise a voice of Kenyan unity because that's what we all felt. And so I think it's a very important, and people reference it a lot. It's something that people come and go, yeah, see, it's like Nasisi, da-da-da-da-da. So it seems to have entered into the consciousness, but we're part of a much bigger debate here. And of course, we're up against very unscrupulous politicians who are prepared to divide people, murder people, destroy communities for their own political gain.
Yes, in the back.
Funding is as ever a huge problem. I mean, we have 3 programs. We have this. This is a combination of the Nairobi and the Mombasa companies. And the Nairobi company is the slums. And while everyone goes, oh, the slums, that's so awful, and it's just, oh, it's wonderful you work there. Now, about your Maasai program. And they're much happier to fund. That's the easiest program because it's people in traditional dress, singing traditional songs, and it sort of appeals to a romanticism, I think. Raising money for the slums is probably the hardest one that we have, and we don't have any funding for them at the moment. In terms of filmmaking, it's a very exciting time to be involved in making film in Africa. There's the access through 3G phones to the vocabulary and film literacy is enormous. So there's a massive amount of young people now who want to participate in filmmaking, and we've had quite a few films now coming out. We had Soul Boy, Nairobi Half-Life, our film, and Ndoto za Liberty, Something Necessary. There's a sort of now there's becoming a filmmaking tradition. We've got directors like Wanuri Kahio and Judy Kabinge, and there's a sense we have an industry, but it's precarious and very, very small. But you can make films a lot cheaper there than you could here. So, and the technology now is so much better and so much more accessible to people. This film we made in 3.5 months, which I would never try and do again. I mean, it was a sort of nightmare of stress and anxiety, and because we had the deadline of the election coming. If we didn't finish it before the election, there was really not much point in us making it. So it was too long. The first film we made over 14 months in our spare time. In fact, one of the actors, in fact, the evil politician's wife, in the first film, she plays a sweet young girl, and she gets pregnant while we're filming, has the baby, and the baby's in the end of the film. So that was a much more enjoyable process, I would say.
Yes.
It means it's us. And it's what it was about. It was about, we wanted to make something which was about what we could do, as individuals, because the problem with things like this is people feel very powerless, but they will let a racist remark go by, and or a tribal remark go by, so that you'll hear things said regularly, and it's very important that you don't let those things get said.
I wanted to follow up on the fact that the process for making films takes a significant amount of time and resources, and if your initial mission in part might be focused on health and information, how does the intricacies of all that you have to do to make a film suffer a little bit? Because, of course, if you make one, you see the opportunities for another even before you fully recover from that experience. How has your focus been shifted from, the health initiatives?
Well, I mean, we've gone very much back towards our health initiatives. We are making a documentary to look at Kenyan identity as well, based on Jane Elliott's Brown Eyes, Blue Eyes experiment, which was done here in the 1960s. So we are looking, but that is our answer in terms of drama. So we have a very, very successful campaign to stop female circumcision with the Maasai community in the Loita Hills. And it's the use of culture can be the most extraordinary entry point. And the Maasai feel quite rightly that their culture is under attack. And this is a very important rite of passage, and that's how you become a woman and how you are cleaned and how you become part of society. And you have to approach it respectfully. And we have a performance where there's two groups of men and women, one singing for circumcision and one singing against circumcision. And because they have the best song and the best performers. And gradually people start defecting, and it ends with two women on stage, one who's clearly very defiant that she's going to keep going with the practice, and we say, just let's talk about it. And the feedback from all the communities we work with there is that we've come to them in a culturally appropriate way, and so we can begin a dialogue about it. And we don't call it female genital mutilation, we call it female genital cutting, not because it's not mutilation, it quite clearly is, but you have to approach these things respectfully, and then you can start having a dialogue. And we've gone from 98% of girls being cut to below 50% now in 4 years. And we really can see, and we think in 3 years we'll be able to stop. So we've kind of gone back to our roots in a way, and this is, I mean, we still, putting this out in schools, and it's still a very important debate. And the country is, we may have got through the last election peacefully, but the country is still very, very divided.
Maybe one more question, yes.
Well, it's to be encouraged, male circumcision, because it reduces But it's a very different thing. It's just cutting off a foreskin. It's not, you know, it's nothing to compare with what the girls have to go through. Well, they do type 2. They remove the clitoris and the labia minora and the labia majora. And the girl is left with a wound that is so bad her leg is tied to the roof of the hut for 4 to 6 weeks afterwards because she can't put her legs together. So in comparison to that, losing a foreskin is, you know, and also it reduces, for a lot of men, they can't wash after sex. And if vaginal fluid collects under the foreskin, it can actually penetrate through the skin and they can become infected. So it's actually to be encouraged for men. But of course, for women, it's you know, very important that it's stopped.
Closing remarks in terms of how close you are to that documentation piece. I know that you said that on the film about cutting female genital mutilation, how much effort has gone into at least bringing it to this level?
Well, we want to. I mean, we're trying to raise some funds at the moment to make that performance into a little film, because all the communities around that also practice circumcision, they're seeing that the loiter massae are changing, and they're going, why are you doing that? And, you know, and so they're asking for us to do it. So it's very important we do have that. And also the debate in loiter is now, we've sort of gone beyond that initial performance piece, and there is acceptance now that there is change, and so it's about moving the whole community towards it. So it's close.
Nick Redding, let's give him another round of applause, please. Thank you very much. I think that's about all the time we have. You're going to be around in the lobby if anyone wants to have further conversation, and please continue to spread the word for this incredible and wonderful celebratory gathering that we have been blessed with. And thank you so much. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.